Welcome, everybody. Sunday night, August 11th. Thank you for joining this two-way to talk about the presidential campaign. And whether you're watching on YouTube or here on the two-way platform, grateful to you for joining in both in the chat and as you participate in the conversation, adhering to the presumption of grace and the ethos of this platform, which is ideas shared freely without any recrimination and with understanding and peace and love. I've gotten so many emails and texts lately from people saying, why are you endorsing Kamala Harris for president? I'm not. I'm doing my best to give people my sense of where things stand. And as you know, if you've listened to me, I don't think we'll know where this race stands till after the debate and after the Democratic convention, after the end of summer, after Labor Day, after the debate, and things settle down. But if all I did every day was tell people that, people wouldn't be that interested in what I had to say. In addition, what's happening now reflects where we are and it influences where we're headed. And so the fact that Donald Trump is going from being the front runner to, in my estimation, no longer the front runner is important. And it's important to discuss why. And of course, of great interest to everybody here and the country to understand where things are headed. Some of you may have had time to read the note I sent earlier, a special edition of Wide World of News, laying out why I think the Republicans are in a tough position right now. Talked to so many strategists in both parties, text, email, phone calls this weekend. And I think unless a Republican works for the Trump campaign directly, in my conversations, they don't believe Trump is the favorite. And they give him anywhere from a 30% chance to a 48% chance. That's today, just as polls are snapshots, these conversations are snapshots of where we are. And I had three conversations in particular were very informative to me and influential in shaping how I see where things are. Three Republicans with great national political experience, three Republicans who very much do not want Kamala Harris to win, three Republicans who've given to Donald Trump's campaign or raised money for him. And they had varying degrees of confidence that Trump would win, from someone who believes Trump is still the favorite, but who's associated with the campaign, to somebody who thinks if Trump executes, he'll win, to someone who thinks that it's very unlikely Trump will win, barring some cataclysmic event, some change of fortune that impacts Kamala Harris. I don't know exactly what his chances of winning are, but again, I think they're currently below 50%. I don't put them much below 50%, but I do put them below 50% today because of some of the dynamics that I've written about and talked about. There's three big questions to me that interact that will really play a decisive role in determining whether he can win and whether she can hold on. One is, how liberal is she, and how liberal will her record be exposed as? She's quite liberal, and she's repudiated a lot of her most liberal positions through anonymous advisors, basically saying she now holds the position of the administration in which she serves, rather than the positions she took as a senator and as a presidential candidate on her own in 2019. Someday she'll have to explain at least some of those position changes, and there'll be more unearthed about positions she's taken in the past. But she would be the most liberal president ever elected. She would be, in the modern era at least, she would be significantly more liberal if her previous positions held, not the Biden administration positions. She'd obviously be more liberal than the administration in which she serves. So that's one factor, is just sort of how liberal does she get painted as being. Two is, how effective is Donald Trump in prosecuting that case? If this were George W. Bush, I don't have any doubt that the level of how liberal she is would be put front and center. And I think the chances of undermining her credentials as a commander-in-chief would also be pretty effectively raised by George W. Bush, whose I think political talents were underrated. I don't know whether Donald Trump will be able to do that. The most bullish people on his side say, well, he's undisciplined and flailing now, but he'll focus come the debate, come September, October, and he'll be able to put that in sharper relief. We'll see. The third thing is the media, and whether the media, if Trump does a good job of talking about her record, whether the media buys into that or at least puts it on the conveyor belt. And if you look at previous attempts by presidential candidates to paint the opposition in unflattering terms. It requires some media buy-in. Now, the good news for Trump, as I wrote earlier today, is that the portrait he wants to paint of her, not up to the job, not able to win a general election, very liberal, not someone who the country should trust to lead the nation. That's a portrait that many Democrats and many in the media believed a month ago, but it's been erased by what's happened. And as I've said before, the media now has a single mission, is to stop Donald Trump from winning. So the performance he would have to give to get the media to focus on what he wants them to focus on, her liberal positions from the past and her partnership with Joe Biden on immigration and the economy, it's going to be a very hard thing to do, and much harder if his level of discipline is as low as it's been. So this weekend, if you asked any Republican, congressional Republican, strategist, donor, many voters who want Trump to win, what's he need to do? They'll say he needs to be disciplined, not in talking about all these things. I could list them off, all the things he's been talking about, but just talking about the issues contrast on the issues most important to voters and her past positions. He was at private fundraisers out west, and the reports I got out of those were he basically talked about the crowd size and how his crowds are bigger than hers. And that one is particularly galling to people because when he talks about crowd size, or he talks about polling, it makes up leads in polling, or when he talks about January 6th, any of these things are totally galling to strategically minded, tactically minded Republicans. Today, he posted something that it took me a couple hours to accept that it's true, that this is not a parody site. But on Truth Social, he posted this, and some of you probably have seen this. He's here in this post, he's positing that her crowd in Michigan was non-existent. And really what it was an AI-generated series of images that suggested he had a big crowd. Or she had a big crowd, rather. This is sort of the last thing in the world that his supporters who want him to be disciplined would like to see. There's so many unhinged things about this. There's nothing positive about it. It's just him obsessing more over crowd size. And I will say that it comes at a bad time for those who are looking to him to demonstrate more discipline. But I'll also say, you can take that down. Thank you. That people forget that he won in 2016 and he almost won in 2020 behaving like this. There's some reasons to think that perhaps he can't win behaving like this, or this time, or that his behavior is worse. I don't think his behavior is worse. I could give you a lot of examples of things he said in 2016 and 2020 that were pretty much in line with that. But most political professionals do not believe that that kind of thing is compatible with doing what he needs to do to win. Last thing I'll say is if you watch Republicans talking, including the president, the former president, and his running mate, but Tom Cotton and others, out talking about this race, their big thing is she's got to have a press conference. She's got to have a press conference. She's got to answer questions. She's got to do an interview. I think they're setting themselves up potentially for a big problem, because she could do those things and do great or more than good enough. And again, the bar will be set by a dominant media that right now she can do no wrong with. I don't think that their confidence that her having a press conference or doing an interview is a silver bullet is warranted. And again, I think they're setting themselves up, if she performs well, for a real problem. Many people are looking at the debate. Again, I'd say the same thing. Who judges who wins the debates if it's not a clear knockout? And the press, to a large extent, social media too, but the dominant media does a lot of it. And so I'm not sure they can say she's going to lose. She's going to lose the debate. I'm not sure they can say the minute she sits down for an interview or press conference, the whole thing's exposed, particularly because chances are she's not going to be doing an interview or calling on people at a press conference who are going to ask her the hardest questions. That just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And I don't think, I think, whether she does an interview with Jen Psaki or the cast of The West Wing, or someone else, it's hard to imagine a scenario to me where she puts herself in a position, if she's prepared, where she's going to do poorly. And so they're sort of hanging everything on that. Seems like a bad idea to me. All right. I see lots of hands up, which is great. We're going to call for more. I had a great colloquy earlier today with Alex Castellanos and Hank Morris, veteran strategists, one Republican, one Democrat. And so we're going to start with them. And I'm just going to ask them to, as best they can, replicate the conversation that we all had by email. And then I'm going to, just to preview a little bit, I'm going to bring Katie and Jessica in to join them because I want to hear what they've got to say. But Alex and Hank, you guys just go to it as faithfully as you can to the exchange you had. And Alex, you start because you started it off. Just have that conversation about where you think things stand and what's happening now and what Trump might need to do to get back in it.
Well, I put up a lot of this on a little piece at Twitter today. Alex Cast, ALEXCAST, promotion here. And basically the idea is this, that Trump is doing exactly what you just said, Mark. He's all over the board. He's panicked because he's behind and because Harris is on a roll. And he senses that. And, he is a creature not of political strategy, but of entertainment. And his show is not working as well as hers. And so what's he doing? He's throwing 10 different campaigns at Kamala Harris. She's responsible for all the administration's failures. She's inept. She's too liberal. She's size matters, crowd size. She's not black. All the crazy tweets are back. And in my experience in politics, one bad campaign is better than 10 good ones, and they need to focus. Anybody who's been in politics a while has seen this campaign before, the campaign you run against Kamala Harris. You run against them as a liberal, out of touch with mainstream America. And then when the candidate reacts like a vampire getting hit with sunlight, I'm trying to get back to the middle. Then it's the Faustian bargain. She sold her soul for political gain. And that makes her a politician. That makes her not the future, but more of what we've got now that everyone hates. Now, that at least gives you one campaign under which you can put everything. What Harris is doing, though, is very powerful. And what she's doing is she is just making a full tilt reinvention. This isn't plastic surgery. This is rebirth. This is a clone. This is something new. And that can be very powerful. She's made one mistake, in my view, and that is the new Kamala dropped her mask for one moment and picked Waltz as VP. That's the one thing that doesn't fit with new moderate centrist, I'm tough on the border, I'm going to cut taxes on tips. Whoa, wait a minute. And so they have to undermine that. If I think Newt, for example, and all of us on our side have thought, well, maybe, H.W. Bush was 17 points behind and he ran and beat Dukakis. Well, she's not Dukakis. Competence is not sexy. Competence doesn't alter a religion or a cult. And she's got the future, which Dukakis and McGovern didn't have. Sometimes people don't want to hear things about their journey to hope and change. And that's the strength she's displaying right now. I think you're right, Mark. I think right now she's favored. She's moving. She's on a roll. I don't think Republicans can let her have this convention. I think that Republicans need to counter program the convention with a theme. And the theme is Kamala Harris, don't let Kamala fake you. This whole convention, this whole campaign is an effort to deceive you. And Remember who she just picked as VP. I think they got to go there if they're to have a shot to stop this really impressive momentum that the campaign has built.
Hank.
Well, Mark, I have a lot less to say than Alex, but everything Alex said has to do with message. None of it has to do with messenger. And all of that is flipped in the last month, where a month ago, the Democrats had a terrible messenger. Now the Republicans have a terrible messenger. And he's shown himself incapable of carrying any message, A. And then I basically, aside from that rather large point, I think I agree with most of what Alex said, although, you know, they can't compete with a Democratic convention. That's like billions of dollars of free media, and they'll be throwing pebbles in the ocean against it. So
just on that, I tend to agree with you, but I tell you, a lot of Republicans say he can't wait. He's got to be involved. He's got to do it the week of the convention.
I'm not saying he should wait. He should have started 3 weeks ago. But campaigns are relative choices, and any definition of her is in a context of comparing her to Trump, and it's not comparing to somebody else. I'll also make another point about the Dukakis Bush thing, which is Bush started to come back at the Republican convention, which has already happened this time. So there's no Republican convention with Lee Atwater and Charlie Black saying every morning what they're going to do for the rest of the day. And then they did it that night, and during that day, every day they picked up 2 or 3 points. By the end of that convention, Bush wasn't behind by 22 points, but they already had their convention. Now it's our turn. So they're in a terrible, terrible spot. Aside from what might happen in the debate, where there's going to be a large audience, aside from what might happen with some extraneous event, which is unknowable, it's just as likely to help Harris as hurt her, but we'll see.
I need a mute button so that when Hank says really smart things, we won't hear them. But I will say that underneath all of this, this race does not move much and has not moved much, though she may be breaking out a little now, like Trump did around the assassination attempt. This race doesn't move much because the fundamentals are, there are people out there hurting economically. There are people who are having trouble putting food on the table and paying the rent. There are people out there who are uncertain how they're going to go on. And a lot of that is built in now. So I wouldn't discount Trump's ability to come back on it, but and not, can he blow out the Democratic convention? No, but if he can just steer the Titanic in a slightly different direction, it would help.
But you know, Alex, on the economy, who do you trust more in the economy? That has fundamentally changed over the last month. And I mean, there's a poll out that has them even. I'm not sure they're even, but there's certainly where it's not a killer for Harris right now.
It's a big problem for him. Megan and then Eleanor, and guys, stay. I'd love for the 4 of you to chat. I'm going to step out. Megan, go ahead, and then Eleanor, please.
I mean, I think I'm just confused where all his surrogates are, where all the Republican attack dogs are. As I have said on this Zoom, like a lot, there's really radical policies on both the vice president, but especially Governor Walz's part. Abortion is legal up to 36 weeks in Minnesota by a bill he signed. That is radical by the most pro-choice woman's stance. There are things that are in his bills that are about children and gender surgery, starting as young as 10 and 12 years old. These are like very core meat and potato issues with my specific audience, which is conservative women between the ages of 25 and 45 that are like major, major issues. And you wouldn't know that because no one's telling you, because everything is just their joy and he's the cool dad and girl boss and whatever. And I just have no idea where the hell anyone, all these brilliant people, Susie Wiles, who is the greatest genius to ever exist, where are you? And where are the women that you are supposed to represent out there? I mean, I've never seen such flat-footed bullshit, quite frankly, in my life. And I am not a Trump supporter, obviously, and I'm not a Trump fan, but I'm sure as hell not a Kamala or JD Vance, or I'm sorry, or a Waltz fan. And I'm not a JD Vance fan either. I'm out of luck everywhere, but I'm shocked at I just don't know what they're doing. They're like hanging out in Mar-a-Lago doing weird press conferences. So I don't even know how you course correct. I don't like, if it were me and I were working on this campaign, I'd be like, so this is an all hands on deck emergency situation. The Titanic's going down. Ivanka and Melania, you're on TV. You don't want to be a part of it? Too bad. Your last name's Trump. Like every surrogate possible, Sarah Huckabee, women that people like. And we're just like, they're just going to like, I think he's going to lose by historic numbers unless they reroute soon. And I think the rumors I'm hearing just from my friends who work in Hollywood about what is being planned for the DNC, I mean, I expect Beyonce to be there. I expect it to be a MTV award level cultural experience. And the fact that this election is now about vibes, I just don't even know at this point. I literally was having a text exchange about whether or not Trump actually wants to win now. Like maybe he wants to lose and he's had some like near-death experience and he no longer wants to win, because that's how unimpressive the campaign he's running is right now. And
Eleanor, thank you, Megan.
Well, I
with
come
us.
at this from a different perspective, not, gee, what can Donald Trump do to get back in the game? The country signaled quite a number of months ago they didn't want Donald Trump and they didn't want Joe Biden. I think Nikki Haley was on the mark when she said whichever party gets rid of their 80-year-old candidate is going to win. Harris is a breath of fresh air. The Democrats have always run on policy proposals and they have, answers for every problem under the sun. They're running more on emotion now. On broadly, she is associated with the Biden agenda. She's not afraid of the negative story. She's going right at immigration with an ad right away. She comes across as comfortable in her own skin, and her vice president is not somebody you can accuse of being a radical lefty. He doesn't look the part, and the issues that he's advocated for and passed in Minnesota are broadly popular across the country. So the Democrats right now have a winning hand. I'm not naive enough to think this continues right on to election day, but it could. She'll make some mistakes. Steven Spielberg, I think, is helping with the Democratic convention. They will showcase all the issues that Democrats care about and the personalities, and the Democrats have a great bench. So, Trump clearly is not fit for office. And I didn't want to say that about Biden, but I came to realize that that was the case. He can run the country now, but 4 years from now, the next 4 years, a lot of the complaining about him and what the polls were telling us was true. And, a candidate who rails about Hannibal Lecter and electric boats versus death by sharks at his own convention, and then is talking about competing with Martin Luther King Jr., saying he had a bigger crowd than King did. I mean, the man is so self-involved and so full of grievances, and now he's run out of complaining about the courts. He's kind of going to win his standoff with the various courts, and now he's complaining, well, they traded out Biden. I spent all this money running against Biden, and now I have to run against Harris. The public wants somebody to tell them what they're going to do for the next 4 years. And I don't know that even if Trump were able to discipline himself and do that, I don't know that what he talks about for the next 4 years is all that appealing. Mass deportations, more tax cuts for the rich. So anyway, it's a fascinating election. There's going to be lots of, bumps ahead. And I think we all want to do what's the best for the country. So I'm not questioning anybody's motives, but I sure, as a member of the dominant media, I sure would not like to see Trump regain office.
All right, Eleanor, thank you. Stay with us. All right, so now I brought in two of our favorite voices, Katie Johnson, who supports Donald Trump historically. We're not sure where she is today. She'll tell us. And Jessica Thomason, who lives in Florida, who's supporting Kamala Harris. Katie, you first. How are you experiencing the race right now? How do you think things are going for the two candidates? And are you more or less inclined to vote for Donald Trump at this point than last we talked?
Well, okay, so I read the newsletter that you sent today, and then I also read all of Alex's tweets earlier today, and felt exactly the same way as far as like the trajectory that you thought about the race and that Alex did. And I mean, Hunter and I talked about it. Like we were driving back, and we were talking, and I just think he has gone off the rails. But I also I kind of feel like he wanted to run against Biden, and it was more so like once that flame was gone, like he sort of just lost his path. And like I think it was it was more about the getting even than in almost really winning. I think it had to be winning against him more so. And I don't know how he gets it back. I mean, I believe what you say, that there's a chance that he could, but I don't know. It just depends on if everybody's watching what we're all watching. Because like I talked to my mother-in-law this weekend because we were at their house, and she's not paying attention to anything right now.
Yeah.
Like she's not watching. I mean, she sees like the little clips if she catches the evening news, but like she cuts hair and works late in the evening. And I mean, she's going to still vote for him regardless, because like that's her pocketbook. And so like what he says or does, it's not going to matter. And she, I don't know if she knows anything about Kamala, which makes me wonder like how much of that is happening on the other side as well, as like as far as the younger voters that are the TikTokers and the ones that are just seeing the little clips here and there. Like how many people aren't, paying attention to all the details that we all are, and are just getting the little snippets and maybe don't know that the flip-flopping has happened, like the tax cut, like, I mean, the tax on tips that she decided to start saying, like things like that.
Yeah. Katie, I'm hearing that from other people too, that we're all a little too close to it. And most people, it's August. The kids are either back to school or headed back to school, not paying attention. I want to ask you one more question, and then I'd love Jessica to respond to what you said.
Okay.
Are you feeling, I know you're not a big Kamala Harris supporter, but are you feeling at all intrigued by her or less scared about her being president than you were before?
I think I'm in a way more scared because I think she's so appealing looking, if that makes sense. Like I think if you just look at her and you listen to her talk and you don't know or pay attention to the policies, that I think it would be so easy to be swooped up into it and I'm swept up into it. Sorry. And so I think that's a little scarier to me. I did tell Hunter that had she picked Shapiro, that would have made it a lot harder to harder to not vote for her, if that makes sense. Like it would have made her a lot more appealing to me. Walls made it absolutely a no-go. I mean, just because I think to what Alex said, like it showed her lapse of, like it showed her reverting back to how she had been. Yeah.
Jessica, I would love for you to respond to anything and everything and just tell us how you're feeling about the race right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm not trying to get too confident, but I feel like, I mean, I would be shocked if she doesn't win. I think there's so much, obviously enthusiasm, and I really don't see that changing unless something really significant happens that, makes people turn against her. But I think the first debate is really going to be a critical moment, because kind of like hitting on what Katie said, I think a lot of people are in their own echo chambers. And if you're not somebody, like if you're someone who's more on the right, you're hearing a lot about her from the right. And so it's painted that way. Same for people on the left, they're hearing just the worst of everything Trump does, never anything positive. And when you know, everyone will be watching the debate. I think that's when a lot of people who aren't currently tuned in will start to pay attention. And when you see the two of them debate, I hope it happens. I think the people who have underestimated her are going to be surprised, because she's really been downplayed, and really on both sides. Whenever they announced her as the candidate, I thought, oh God, I know she is not even close to the top of the list of people we would want. They've never really promoted her. They don't even let her speak. And then when she started speaking at rallies, I understand she's reading a speech, but she handles herself very well. She handled some protesters the other night very well. She's starting to get more comfortable at her rallies and ad lib a little bit more, and her personality is coming out, and she seems like she's commanding, and she seems very confident. And then you have Tim Walz, who is like, everybody is in love with this guy, and they feel like he's sort of like the anti-establishment choice. I think that Josh Shapiro would have been, in my opinion, the establishment choice. And even just her selection of Tim Walz feels like, oh wow, it's almost like she's been in the shadow of Joe Biden this whole time, and she somehow has been released, and now things are taking on a life of their own, and people are excited about it. So I'm kind of curious. Obviously Katie and I have our own opinions pretty set, but the people who are sort of not so sure how they feel, I think when they see her up against him and see that contrast, I think that's going to be the end for him.
Okay. Eliana Johnson, I'd love if you've got any questions for Katie or Jessica, I'd love for you to ask them, or if you want to comment, that'd be awesome. Sorry, you can, there you go.
No, I like to lurk, but
I know, but I like to put you to work.
okay. Sorry,
You
my
can
kid,
pass.
sorry, my kids like movies going in the background. But I'm curious, like, what role these two think the media plays, because like my concern about this is that I'm navel gazing, but like I legitimately do think it's quite big. So I'd be curious in the thoughts of those two, just as regular citizens.
Yeah, Katie, what do you think? Does the media play a big role, and if so, how would you describe it?
I feel like the media is playing a big role, and I feel like it's unfair. I really truly believe like this platform and platforms. I mean, like even John Padurit's, like his podcast, and Meghan McCain's podcast. Like I feel like those are becoming the ways that are becoming. It feels like the more truthful ways to get our information. Whereas I don't feel like I really get a true feel on anything from just watching the news. Like it's kind of, I want to say that you made an argument at one point whenever you were introducing two-way, and you were saying like, instead of having to watch 10 different shows and try to piece together what you really think are the truths, like we can try to give you really what's happening all in one place. I feel like you said that, or maybe I told somebody else that about your show.
Yeah,
but
thank you. Jessica, let me ask you, do you think the media coverage is fair and impartial towards the two sides, or much more favorable towards the Democrat?
I think mainstream media does favor Kamala. I mean, I think it's probably pretty hard to I mean, you do a really good job actually of remaining neutral, because I see you accused all the time of being too right or too left, which means you're probably doing a good job. But I mean, I do think mainstream media favors Kamala, but at the same time, they don't say anything positive about Donald Trump, but they cover everything he does. So in the sense that they give him coverage, I think that they do that for him. But when you listen to him, it's like, it's pretty out of control at this point. I feel like, I don't know. But yeah, Kamala does have the media going for her. And eventually she's going to have to answer to everything on her own, like at a debate, or when she eventually does sit down interview. I don't see her doing that before the DNC. Maybe not even before the debate, because why? She doesn't have to. Whenever Trump was winning, I remember he said, why would I debate? I'm winning. And that's where she's at. I mean, why take a risk and do some interview when you don't have to yet? But I do think she should, and she will have to eventually.
Megan or Eleanor,
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, it feels like the media just isn't asking any of the tough questions of anybody. I mean, just like there stopped being any pushback about Biden's state, like how just like how everything was just great right before he left, and like even though we were all talking about how like it seemed like it was on the horizon, then all of a sudden he was gone, and there were no more questions really asked. And there was no pushback. And then there hasn't really been any pushback to Kamala about like, what all did you see like on a daily basis? And I mean, because she's not taking any questions, and it is hard because like, it would be great to hear what she has to say, or what Governor Walz has to say, or just anybody really from the campaign.
Yeah.
And I mean, at least I don't like Donald Trump, but at least, I mean, he did do the press conference. I mean, we all watched it, and it was the shit show that it was. But at least he did get up there and he did answer anybody's question. And then JD Vance, I don't like him, but like he went on 3 shows today. Like it's hard to look at the two and not feel like there's a discrepancy in the media coverage.
Yeah. Megan or Eleanor,
or the accessibility even.
Either of you have anything you want to say or ask?
I just want to say, this is all going to happen in due time. She hasn't been the potential nominee for very long, and Walz was just named a couple of days ago. What they're doing is working. For many months, Biden couldn't get the kind of attention that they're getting. Her rallies are getting covered, and so are Trump's rallies. Problem is, Trump's act, as Alex Castellanos said earlier, Trump's act is getting old. People have seen it. He keeps people waiting. They then drift away as he goes on and on for 90 minutes. So, the voters like somebody new and exciting. So I think the Democrats are right to continue on the path they are. Next week is the convention, but they're going to be revealing her economic proposals later this week. And she pulled a fast one by agreeing with Trump's hastily tossed out proposal that there are no taxes on tips. Well, I looked into that. Actually, 2/3 of tipped workers don't make enough money to pay taxes. So it's not giving away the store, but she's going to come out with that. Plus her ideas tied to that to raise the minimum wage. She's going to have a more complicated economic package. So the proposals are coming. And I wouldn't expect big departures from where Biden was on these issues. A little more distance, perhaps, from Netanyahu, and a little more pressure to get some sort of a ceasefire in Gaza. But the right is complaining. The conservatives are complaining that she's not doing interviews. What? I mean, she will. We will know whether she can handle herself. And right now, keep lowering the expectations. That's something they may well come to regret. This woman was the Attorney General of California. She was a prosecutor. Anybody who watched her perform in the Senate. So she may be better at some things than others, but I don't question her ability to think on her feet and respond in a debate or to questions.
I mean,
Megan, anything else?
I would do nothing differently than exactly what she's doing right now. The crazy thing is that there isn't more of an outcry from the rest of the media that she hasn't conducted a press conference or done an interview. Don't put the blame on her. What she, as Eleanor, as you said, what she is doing is working. I think where I take issue with what you said is that any time that she spoke extemporaneously in 2019 during her campaign, she made a flub. And where the media isn't pressing her, where she isn't getting critical coverage, is where she has done a 180 on the positions that she put out in 2019. And she's not really getting critical coverage. There's not a real interrogation of, okay, so you don't support banning fracking anymore. Why? She's allowed to put out statements through anonymous aides saying, well, that's not her position anymore. And she's done that time and again through various issues. And it doesn't garner critical press coverage. They just put out uncritically the statement of anonymous aides. So if I were her, I wouldn't do anything differently. Like it's working great. And I was on the PBS NewsHour on Friday night, and this issue of Tim Walls's military service came up, and there was a question put to me that said, well, he's getting attacked about it, and what do you think? I mean, there's no merit to these claims, but what do you think? And it just struck me that that it's actually not true that there's no merit to the claims, but like in the reverse situation, a national news anchor on a public broadcast station would never say about a Republican, hey, there's no merit to these claims.
Right. To the contrary, they would say to me. Megan, do you have anything else you want to say or ask?
Yeah, I think, I mean, first of all, I feel like I should also say that Eleanor, I grew up watching the McLaughlin Group every Sunday, so I'm a huge fan. And even just to disagree with you on a Zoom is an honor. But I disagree with almost everything you said, but like what a crazy life this is to be able to do that. The show should make a comeback, by the way. Look, I agree with what Eliana was saying. When you're on the right and you're conservative in any faction, and I'm not a politician, but I'm always the foil. Your coverage and the way people approach you is you just get slaughtered for anything. I can even see on the chats, like just having a contrarian opinion that is, because every place you go that's mainstream is left. If Trump or any candidate hadn't done any press conferences in this period of time or done any kind of sit down interviews with anyone, even Rachel Maddow, there would be a lot more outcry. And I think the questions I still have are, one of my best friends didn't go on a summer vacation this year because the cost of groceries and the cost of living was so much higher the past few years. And she has 4 children. And I think the questions I have are just, what are you going to do about the economy? Because no matter what, inflation is killing a lot of people I know in my personal life. And just vibes and her being a woman aren't answering these questions. The border, immigration is one issue in a lot of polling. And there's no answer to that. And she was the border czar. And so the answer to that question is either that President Biden just completely kept her in the basement and she had no power or role whatsoever. And they just didn't use her at all. Or she does have one and she's trying to change it right now. I think what she said about tips is very interesting because the tip thing I love to gamble. I go to Las Vegas a lot. I have a lot of friends who work in the service industry in Las Vegas. The tip thing is a big thing for them, especially car dealers. And the fact that she all of a sudden is taking a cornerstone policy from Trump and repackaging it as her own. Who are you? I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're talking about, but I know that your track record and Tim Walz's track record, I don't care that he's putting on a camel hat. I don't care that he hunted on occasion before he became a total gun grabber. The vibes aren't working for me. I need policy. And what would help is if you showed me policy. Someone on the chat said I'm rambling like the Donald. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to say that this feels for me, it almost feels a little dystopian how slobbering the media is on a woman who 6 months ago was basically a joke. Just look on social media and couldn't conduct an interview. Just go on any old thing she did about, how she's unburdened the coconut tree. She couldn't basically string a sentence together. And all of a sudden, verbatim, she is an Obama orator, according to Molly Jong-Fast on MSNBC. She's President Obama now. It's irrational. And I think that's where I get frustrated because it's just be honest in your coverage and reporting, but they're trying to sell it so much that it does feel like there's, that it's not honest, that this is not honest coverage on the part of a lot of people. And again, Trump is a buffoon who is hurting himself at the same time, but these kind of lies and this kind of coverage, I know what it breeds, and it will breed and lead to Trump 2.0, which is going to be the sequel you do not want. And it's going to be so much worse than Trump. The things that follow and the anger that it's breeding, I'm telling you, it doesn't die just because Trump will be not elected to the presidency.
All right. I want to thank you all. Stay with us. Jump right in. I'm not going to mute you. Staying. I'm going to bring up the screen now. But thank you. And I thank the 4 of you who have young kids for making time on a Sunday night, especially to join us. So thank you. So I'm going to bring in Ray, who is a journalist and a genius and a great voice on two-way. Ray, what's on your mind? Ray, can't hear you, buddy. Don't know why, but I can't hear you.
How about
Still can't
now?
hear you. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right. So first of all, Megan, I have great respect for what you do. So thank you very much. A couple of points that I think are being missed here. One, reference Kamala Harris and her oral skills, her ability to speak. That was not the right way to say that. She's been extremely well coached. And if you take a look, especially at her appearance introducing Walls, everything that she was doing, everything from her gestures to where she broke with her speech to how she waited and gave pause for the audience to react. She's clearly been extremely, extremely well coached. So the difference, I think, is what you're seeing is that. Also, I think Republicans are going to have a tremendously difficult time on the vibes argument, on the likability argument, because Mamala and Coach, which sounds like a bad Midwestern sitcom, is extremely likable. Whether or not you like their policies or not, for people who aren't tuned in on policies, you're going to like them. In reference to media coverage, it's going to get worse. And I would encourage people to not only look at what they read, but listen to how people ask questions, like that leading question on PBS, in which you can correct me if I'm wrong, where the interviewer said, hey, this is bogus. Will you go ahead now and respond to that? What does that do? It leads the audience to believe that the entire conversation is bogus, and worse, it puts Eliana on the spot to defend something that someone has already told her.
Right. Right. Are you saying the coverage is going to get more favorable to the Democratic ticket?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
I believe so.
Certainly during the convention it will, but you're saying even beyond the convention you think it will?
Yeah, because look at everything that's coming up. I don't know whether or not the Trump trial is going to, or the Trump trial issue is going to happen in September or not, but even if it doesn't, what's the media going to write about? Trump is getting away with the crime because of his buddies in the Supreme Court. Come September, early September, when early voting starts, what's the media going to write about? Oh my goodness, the early voting numbers for Democrats in Arizona, in New Mexico, and Pennsylvania, they're better than they were, if they are, they're better than they were 4 years ago. I can see coming it's going to be very, very difficult for Donald Trump and the Republicans to get positive media news and break through that liability factor over the next month or so.
Amazing. Great. Thank you. Really good, great points, as always. Much appreciated. Let's go to Jim. Jim, tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
Jim from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I was a former candidate for Congress on the Republican side supporting Trump. Mark, my question was about media bias, so I'm glad to go right after Ray. When I was working on Megan's father's campaign for president in 2008, we had 2 weeks of stories about Bristol Palin pregnancy. We had a blogger accusing Senator McCain, accusing Palin of faking her own birth of her son, as you remember from covering it. I'm in shock that last week a story came out about Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, and there's been no follow-up. There were reports of a pregnancy. There's been no questions about did he support or pay for an abortion, anything of that nature. My question is, will these questions come, or has the Trump era been so polarizing that the mainstream media is never going to follow up with questions like this? This would be a huge story in any other campaign I've ever worked on, and we're not seeing any follow-up on it whatsoever. Am I missing something?
Jim, let me ask you a question. First of all, let me remind you in a friendly and non-hectoring way how to pronounce the vice president's name. It's Kamala, like the punctuation mark. Kamala.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all right. No need to apologize. I just always want it said right on two-way because it's her name and it's a sign of respect, I think, for all of us. Look, Senator McCain got very favorable press coverage for most of his career, and then he ran against Barack Obama, and the press found a different favorite. This is the most lopsided coverage I've ever seen. And I'll ask you, Jim, because you know about this stuff. Should the Trump campaign try to get on better terms with the press, or just say, well, it can't happen, we're going to win without it?
Well, on a tactical level, it's always great to have good relations with the press.
Yeah, right. Do you see them trying now? I know you don't have perfect visibility into it, but
I don't
does it seem like they're trying?
But I know they have pros like Jason Miller and Stephen
Yeah.
Chung, and others like that who have
So if
good.
so if you were on a call with those guys and they said, we want to try to get better coverage because right now we're getting killed, what would you tell them to do?
I don't know if it's possible for President Trump to get better coverage from the mainstream media. It seems entirely one-sided, but I would tell them to go on the attack on Kamala in a much more focused way to keep
on what issues.
Everything and anything. I mean, what Alex and what Newt said about radical and dangerous left wing. I mean, they're getting that at. I mean, you've noticed the discipline. They're calling her a radical, dangerous liberal all the time. But I would also be on the attack on this story. I mean, there needs to be some pushing of the press to give equal coverage in some way, and there's none of that. I mean, it's Eliana just said it's just an assumption, and I don't. It makes you wonder if we're in a totally new phase of campaigns where Republicans in the Trump era just can't assume any kind of objectivity and just have to assume that we have to do it all ourselves.
Today, who would you make the favorite for the Commonwealth's electoral votes and why?
I still think President Trump. In the T where I live, there is still tremendous enthusiasm for President Trump. I was speaking with some African American friends in Scranton the other day. They're voting for President Trump. It's going to be a close election. I can't tell you percentage-wise as other people have. The one thing I'd say is this is the most incredibly polarized electorate we've ever seen. People looking at a week or 2 week news coverage and saying, oh, now it's 70-30 one way or the other. We will be sitting here a week out from the election saying it's too close to call. We're in a polarized area, and who is going to win by 1 or 2 points in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan?
Jim, thank you. Come back a lot. Like to hear from you.
Can I say something, Mark? I don't know if
course.
I'm muted.
Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of thank you so much. In terms of what he was just saying about like, why didn't that story stick about Doug Emhoff? I understand that Trump is somebody who's like Teflon Don and he could do anything. And that's not as true maybe for other candidates. But I do think that this past 8 years of everything that Donald Trump has done has really desensitized people to what really constitutes a scandal. So, I mean, maybe that would have been shocking to people in 2014, maybe even 2015. But as time has gone on, people are like, wait, what? I mean, it's not even close to being, I think compared to just what we're used to hearing about, it just doesn't seem like a big deal.
Good point. Jessica, thank you. Stay with us. Chime in anytime. Susan, tell those who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
I'm in Colorado, and I will support Harris. I agree with what Jessica just said and a lot of other comments. And one of the things that personally I see myself is Trump fatigue. He's been saying the same things since 2015. I alone can fix it. This wouldn't have happened if I were president. I mean, I know that's, a new thing, but I'm going to fix it on day one. I'm going to have a plan in 2 weeks. It'll be there. It'll be the greatest ever. He's been saying these things forever. I don't think he has policies, really. When you listen to some of what he says, and I do listen to his rallies, he goes off the rails on things. And I just sort of wonder, am I alone with the Trump fatigue thing? Or is that, is it truly something that's out there? And as far as Doug Emhoff, I mean, how can the Republicans go after Doug Emhoff, given Donald Trump's own personal behavior?
Well, maybe not go after him as much as the press scrutinize it. Susan, let me ask you this. Tens of millions of people agree with you. They have more than Trump fatigue. Why does Trump have a chance to win?
I think his base is extremely strong. And
well, but how big do you think his base is? Because it's just
I don't think his base is more than like 35-40% of the electorate. But I think there's
but then why does he have a chance? Where does he get the additional percentage?
I think there's probably some men out there who don't want to vote for a woman. But I really don't think at this point, unless he truly turns it around and he truly gets disciplined, which I'm not sure he can. I think the comments are interesting about, does he really want to win now? Because it just seems like he's sabotaging himself almost every day. He's going to have another press conference on Thursday. That'll be interesting if it's anything like the one we all watched last week. I think the momentum is on her side, and I really think it's hers to lose at this point.
Okay. Susan,
She's
thank
not
you.
the old one. He is now.
Yep. Yeah. Susan, thank you. Appreciate it. Please come back regularly. All right, Warren, tell us, everybody, where you're from, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
I live in the Dominican Republic, came from Florida, and I vote in Florida. I used to be a Republican. I served in the Nixon administration. I was appointed office by Reagan. I changed parties in 2017. I'm for Harris.
Who'd you vote for in 16 and 20, Warren?
I voted Clinton and Biden.
Okay.
I was
question or comment?
Yeah, I'm just following the situation in Florida with interest. Latest poll, Miami-Dade poll, shows Harris up by 15 points. There are rallies in the villages. Jacksonville has elected a Democratic mayor. And in 2020, Biden carried Miami-Dade by 6 and lost Florida by 3. My question is, am I missing something, or does Harris have a decent shot at Florida?
I don't think so. I think
so.
Really, I think the voter registration in the state is pretty wide, and for the Democrats to win, they probably have to put a couple $100 million, maybe more in. So until they are willing to bite the bullet and put that much in, very difficult in a state that's big with that many media markets that has turned much more red to win. If they went all in and things continue to go well, could they win it? Yes, but I don't think they're gonna have as much money as they have. I don't think they're gonna have enough. The minute they spend $1 on broadcast television in Florida, I will look at the numbers again. But until they do that, the numbers are just too strong for the Republicans for her to win there, even if things are going quite well in the battleground states.
And by the way, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Can I ask you where in Florida do you live?
I live in the Dominican Republic.
Or you no longer live?
I was in Palm Beach Gardens, or Palm Beach County. Yeah.
Okay.
Warren, thank
Mark,
thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Come back off.
Just being a close primary, I'm a registered Republican because there's no Democratic candidates. They don't send anybody down here. I mean, the Democratic Party has abandoned Florida. So we have to register as Republicans because we can't vote on anything.
I called her 4 days in a row. I haven't called her today.
Hold on.
So
Sorry.
I don't think that there's as many Republicans as it appears from the voter registration.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Let's get in Lenny, who is a longtime Democratic everything. Lenny, remind people who you worked for. And I know you're supporting Harris, but...
I worked for, excuse me, Mark, thank you very much. I worked for Dukakis in '88 and then Clinton in '92, and had a brief slot in the federal government myself, writing speeches for the Department of Transportation. That was my reward for the '92 campaign. I think a fundamental thing that has happened is very simple. The biggest single issue, forget all the other issues, the biggest single issue that was driving this campaign was Joe Biden's obvious old age and increasing debility. That overshadowed everything else, no matter what he said, no matter what positions he took. And now Donald Trump, as just common people looking at him, see a crazy old man melting down. I remember very well writing a speech for Jeb Bush, which I did in 2016 to try to help him attack Trump. And he said, I don't need to do this. He's mentally ill. He's going to blow himself up. I said, yeah, but it would help if you light a fuse, Jeb. And he refused. He didn't attack. But now what Jeb forecast is happening before our very eyes. And Republicans are in the exact same position now the Democrats were a month ago, saying, oh, Joe's fine. He's okay. He's fully competent. He can handle it. I'm sorry. If you actually see what Trump says, what his press conferences, read his tweets. The man is going nuts, literally, visibly nuts. That's
Lenny.
a big burden to carry. Enough.
Lenny, what do you think? What do you think Trump's chances of winning are today?
I think they're about 25%.
25.
I mean, there could be incidents offshore that play to his advantage. There could be there's a lot of events that could happen. But do I think he can become disciplined, focused, sharp, and that people will pay attention to him? No, I think he's become Andrew Dice Clay, Grandpa Simpson, the old weird man at the Thanksgiving table who's had too much to drink. No one's going to really, not no one. His base will be with him. He'll get 43% no matter what. I mean, he literally could kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and still get a lot of votes.
Lenny, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Lenny. I want to stop because I want to end on time. I know there's still more people with their hands up. I apologize for that. Please come back. We'll get you in a future date. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, right here on Two-Way on YouTube and on our platform. Sean Spicer and Tim Hogan and I will preview the day for you on the morning meeting. And I will likely be back at a time TBD on our unnamed program tomorrow night. Thank you very much for joining. We'll see you again right here on Two-Way.